it's such a personal thing. Beauty and makeup is such a personal thing, but it's also such a communal thing and
Yes.
such a like a thing of collective joy. When I think back with some of my favorite memories with friends, it's us crowded around a mirror, like doing our makeup together, sharing new lipsticks, like sharing new techniques. And it is a really just like beautiful ritual to have
Yes.
with the people that you love. And
And it makes you love yourself more.
yeah, 100%. Hi, everyone. I'm Avani Johnson, VP of Brand Strategy here at Hirsch Leatherwood, and I'm joined today by Annie Kreighbaum, founder of Kraum, and we're here for our Out of Scope podcast on everything reputation, culture, and business. Have you seen like the Wall Street Journal storyteller article that's been going around on
No.
Twitter? So Katie Dayton, who's a media reporter at the Wall Street Journal, just did a piece about like the uptick of storytellers as jobs and like how like companies from Notion to Chime, like they all have these listings for editorial directors. But I think it's just, again, to your point of like creatives needing a way to make money, like this is going to be the next way that creatives who are otherwise like struggling, they just take on a storytelling role.
But is that okay? But this is an actual role at these companies. Like it's their
Yeah.
job title, or at
Yeah.
least the headline to explain what their role is.
It's like head of storytelling.
But is that not just a way to like reframe a PR person, like an internal? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Right?
And
That's
that
how
was
I always interpreted it.
that was kind of what the piece was asking too, is like, is marketing just going under a rebrand? Or is this actually like a net new idea and creation? So I think
Yeah.
it's just that marketing is going under a rebrand. And like, I mean, my personal POV is that it's being led by tech bros who don't want to call themselves marketers. And so instead they're creating this whole new category around storytelling.
Well, I might have something to offer.
Yeah.
At least to this timeline of the evolution of the storyteller.
Yeah.
As a job role and as a job description. Because I started as a beauty editor, writer, right? And there were a lot of writers back then that thought they would make money from writing, and then the explosion of all these like D2C startups started happening, and so my career is a really good example of this because Into the Gloss, I was editorial director, right? And so that's what that was like my full-time job for maybe a month or two before, kind of in the background, we started working on Glossier. And then I very quickly went from at the time I knew it wasn't a pure creative because we were doing SpawnCon, and whatever. And I understood that was part of the role, especially if you're going to be on staff at any sort of blog or, this was at ExoJane and then Into the Gloss. But I very much went through that kind of like, okay, creative to a marketing person being on the quote unquote brand side. Brands weren't necessarily cool back then in the way that they were. And now I think we're kind of going under a new phase of like brands are no longer cool again. It's not cool to work at like the coolest startup, even if it is the coolest startup. But back then it was, I think to your point, these tech bros, quote unquote, because they were kind of the leaders of the VC startup world back then and still are, use the term storyteller as this like what they felt was a more exciting term to offer to people like me who they were trying to convince to come on full time on the brand side and like sell their soul to like work for like a brand, which I never felt like it was that way. I had a lot of fun. And like, it's in my blood in a way, being a marketer. It was really frustrating for me to be offered roles like, you're our director of storytelling. Because in my mind, and maybe because I come from just the tail end of this more like formal work generation, I knew that job titles were important. And I knew that like if somebody scans their LinkedIn and they don't see creative director, something that they recognize, sometimes they recognize, it's like having a job that's like chief storyteller or whatever is cutesy and all. And a lot of founders are doing it, but it's also like, you're also the founder.
Right.
You can get away with like having this job title that doesn't really mean anything to anyone.
Right, because you don't have to apply to a next job, hypothetically, if this goes well.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're getting credit for everything, right? And so I think it's hard for a creative to think about like, okay, if I am going into this more like formal corporate world, it is kind of hard to define what I do. So I want a job that reflects like the gravitas of or I
Mhm.
want a job title that reflects like the gravitas of what I'm doing. So yeah, anyway, I personally feel frustrated by the term storyteller
Mhm.
because it's like, it almost feels like they're kind of downgrading or like mystifying what a good marketer does.
Right, and it's taking some of, like, the accountability or metrics out of marketing too, which I think is
Mm,
part of the argument for storytelling is that, like, a good narrative shouldn't be beholden to, like, a stock price or whatever it is, but ultimately, at the end of the day, like, marketing is supposed to benefit business in a
yeah,
way that's important
that's
and in a
really,
way that people have done for decades.
yeah.
But I'm glad you brought up Into the Gloss because I read Into the Gloss when I was in high school, middle school, and I think every person probably in our age bracket has read it at one point or the other. But I feel like a lot of people don't realize, or a lot of the average consumers don't realize that Glossier was incubated within that.
Hmm.
And so, you mentioned you'd only been at Into the Gloss for a month before you started working on that in the background. So it sounds like you knew pretty early on that there was like commercial aspirations
Hmm.
for Into the Gloss. How did that change, I guess, the editorial direction or just the work that you were doing day to day?
So when I sat down to interview with Nick and Emily for this editorial director role, like Emily very casually mentioned, "Oh, we're also working on products, so you
Mm.
could, in theory, you could work on that too." And it was very simple to me. It was just like, I love makeup. Yeah, I could totally do that. Never in
Yeah.
my mind did I question, could I make makeup products?
Mhm.
It was like, of course, this is what I want to do. Yeah. If I can do that on the side, not knowing it would like mean, oh, you have two jobs now. But I was like, of course, this is so simple. And it didn't even need any explaining to me why Into the Gloss would go into product. It was just
Mm.
so, it was duh. Because um, as a longtime reader, too, of Into the Gloss, it was so obvious that they were filling this like massive void in the beauty space, which is so weird to think about because every single content creator, every single person on Instagram, your aunt, on Instagram, your cousin is selling beauty products online. But back
Mhm.
then, it was like the forgotten, second cousin to the fashion space online.
Right.
But no offense to second cousins.
I think it's fine.
I too am a second cousin to someone.
Exactly, we're all second cousins. It's okay.
um, but yeah, it was just so obvious that they needed to do a product line because they were also introducing all of us to all these, French, especially French
Mhm.
pharmacy products that we couldn't easily get over here. So it
Right.
made perfect sense that like, oh, they're also kind of bringing this point of view about prepping the skin with an Embryolisse style moisturizer and Bioderma makeup remover, all those
Right.
things you couldn't just go into CVS back then and buy. And so it was just obvious to me, like, oh, this is what Glossier could bring to the market in the US. And yeah, and then I think by accident or by genius, Emily just kind of threw me into the nucleus of like building this company, and my
Mhm.
role just snowballed. And I think that's a testament to Emily realizing how important editorial is, like to a business.
Right.
It's almost like it wasn't even a choice. It was just so natural and obvious that Into the Gloss would create something like Glossier, and within that and I think what excited Emily and Nick about hiring me was, and I don't, did you read Exo Jane?
I've read, like, pieces here and there, but not regularly.
I'm watching Girls for the first time.
For the first time ever?
Yeah.
I'm so
Well,
excited for you.
the first episode I saw, and the only episode I saw
Yeah.
when it went live was when I was working at Exo Jane. And
Okay.
it was an episode, I think, where Hannah went in to interview with a Jane Pratt type
Mhm.
editor.
Mhm.
So it was, anyway, it's so funny, like thinking back to all of that. And like Hannah's journey is very similar. It's kind of
Yeah.
freaky to watch.
Yeah.
As a writer that goes and works on like the advertorial side, it works perfectly
Yeah.
across so many different brand stories. Definitely Into the Gloss was not the first to discover that, but
But I think you were maybe one of the first to, like, do it really well and to succeed to the extent that you did. Like, when I think of brands that have defined this century so far,
uh,
Glossier is absolutely one of them, especially within the beauty industry. Like, I don't think you get Rhode or Merit Beauty today without what Glossier did for both aesthetics, but just also, like, building a community. Um
yeah.
community gets thrown around so much. I think that's one of the words. It's like authenticity this, community that.
Mhm.
How did you guys go about though, like really building up a base of loyal readers and loyal kind of consumers too once you know, obviously made that move into product?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think because it's not the same community that it was at Into the Gloss. And I think
Right.
actually, I think about a lot like what that evolution was like from the Into the Gloss readership to the Glossier customer. And I remember at the beginning, a lot of, I mean, most of the readership was based in the US, but there was a healthy chunk of readers, more so than you would probably think, were outside of the US, and
Mm,
Glossier was only shipping to the US for a very
right.
long time. And so I think that kind of created a little bit of friction within the audience as it was evolving into like more the Glossier audience. Um, and then even, I mean, my role, I was trying to straddle both Into the Gloss and Glossier. And at that point, I think we are up to like 9 or 10 stories a day,
Mhm.
which is just insane to think about. I mean, we did have a small team dedicated to it, but it is really insane to think about putting that much content on every day.
Right.
And these were like, you know, some of these were like pretty long form articles.
Yeah.
Nick and Emily had hired me to basically like throw fuel on the comment section and
Mm,
really kind of get the community like even more engaged, because that was the superpower of Exojane
mm.
world. Um, Superpower and dumpster fire.
Right.
Um, but at least it was this like two-way conversation. It was no longer, I think that's the beauty of the internet. And Exojane really took a lot of advantage of that. It's this two-way conversation with your audience, and that like, you know, was the core of what became like a digital community. You
Right.
know, the comment section was so important to that. And it's funny on Girls, like Lena Dunham has a line about how the comment section
Yep.
is like, you know, where the action really happens, and it's so true.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think growing the community, but also being comfortable with like the community evolving, because it was kind of scary for a long time. There was a lot of internal strife about upsetting the Into the Gloss audience
Mm.
that, you know, in our minds were like so loyal to us for so long, which is crazy because it was like only 5 years old at that point. You know,
Right.
now to think about Glossier, it's like over 10 years old now.
Yeah.
But of course, you like care about those people and you want them to still champion you. But yeah, you lose people along the way, and that's something I'm realizing the longer I like do this, is you have to be comfortable, maybe like losing some of those people to
Right.
evolve and, you know, start a brand and whatever.
Right. It's interesting because as you were talking, I was thinking like the comment section in some ways is like the original social platform, at least for how brands see how their consumers are engaging with products. And like having that feedback loop, to your point, is probably so helpful. And then sometimes you have to decide when to like take a step away and still make the decision that you want to make. But you know, you're talking about like how you were being the editorial director, also kind of helping on the product side at both ends. And those two don't feel like they would always be mutually linked or beneficial. And obviously you're building one brand, but still, you know, creating articles about many different brands. So how did you kind of manage that conflict of interest at times? Or were there any like specific boundaries that you found yourself implementing with your team?
There was a lot of crossover with the Into the Gloss team working on Glossier, and eventually everybody came
Mm-hmm.
over and started working on Glossier most of the time. But there was a period of time where there were dedicated, you know, writers, editors, photographers for Into the Gloss. Tom, the photographer, had his hands in everything too, though. So we were always like grabbing him for like
Yeah.
Glossier stuff here and there, which was great. It was almost like you had the content team perfectly built in to create Glossier, which I think too, even now when brands launch, and it's so crazy now how much AI I'm seeing with
Yeah.
brands, replacing these like content teams.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there was a time when we had to pull the plug on the ad side of the business, because Into the Gloss, you know, they were a luxury beauty website, but it was a huge site and they were making really good money on, you know, ads and SpawnCon. And we were worried, you know, that advertisers would drop out and be like, I'm not going to pay to essentially support
Mm-hmm.
Glossier. And that, I think there was a time of adjustment where brands were like, oh, they have their own product line now. Like, are we going to even send them their editorial team our products to try
Mm,
anymore? Like, are we like
right.
feeding their ecosystem even just by kind of keeping them overlapped into ours in like this kind of unofficial way? I don't know.
Interesting.
But I will say we got a lot of credit. I think we gave ourselves a lot of credit at the beginning of incorporating other brands into Glossier
Mhm.
content, which, you know, now again is table stakes for brands. And I remember being upset when I would see new brands come up and put Glossier products in their photos. And I was like,
Yeah.
wait, you're just like stealing my, like all the branding work that we've done. And like, you're stealing all that clout for yourself. But we were doing that exact same thing when we launched, it was like Glossier
Yeah.
products alongside NARS, alongside Chanel, da, da, da. And I think that really works too. And that was something that, you didn't really used to see in advertising.
Mhm.
All the brands were, and social media creates this new like gray area for advertising where you can break a lot of the rules.
Right.
If you do a Super Bowl commercial for Glossier, you're probably not going to have a Chanel product, but like
Right.
on social,
Right.
it like puts your product in context of like all these other brands and like real girls' lives and
When you're talking about specifically like seeing Glossier products and others ads and getting that like immediate, ooh, like I don't know if I like that. Like I feel like possessiveness is not something that brand builders often talk about, or like maybe they'll talk about feeling protective over their brand, but when you are building a brand as visionary as Glossier or now as Kraum, like there are certain things that I imagine that you want to keep for yourself or want to keep for your brand.
Mhm.
How do you go about like once you're putting something out into the world, you're opening it up for conversation, you're opening it up for people to make it their own? Like what does that feel like as a brand builder and as a founder?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is like a constant conversation. I think the only answer to this conversation about like getting ripped off or am I ripping someone off? Um, you kind of just have to have that best friend that you can text and just
Mm,
vent to them that's in your world that understands. And I'm finding like you usually just have to leave it at that because there's, especially at a company like Glossier, there were so many people, and I won't say who, but a brand you mentioned earlier, I've heard from excellent sources that they literally just copied Glossier's playbook,
mhm.
which is fine. I mean, I think that's the coolest thing in the world. I would love to like teach a class. And again, not like I was the sole creator of Glossier's playbook, although I did write the brand book, literally.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. But it is really cool to think about like that you help develop these things that are now again table stakes or kind of the uh, lowest, like the must haves, like even the PDPs that we designed, like you were talking about the editorial, the world
Mhm.
translating to the brand side. It was like being a beauty editor, you knew I could already predict when putting an article out, you would try to beat the comment section to the punch
Mhm.
and like know what they were going to ask you. Everybody always wanted to know what shades. You always like we were always really careful. Like even if it was one shade of eyeshadow in one photo in like a slideshow of 30,
Mhm.
you just knew somebody was going to be like. So
Right.
you try to beat people to the punch and all those details, and so you kind of like could predict and like foresee what the customer would be asking. And then the big challenge was put yourself, how do we make online shopping better than in-person shopping? So, and that was really easy because I'm a beauty shopper. Like, what do I do in
Mhm.
the store? You swatch on the back of your hand. So then we had photos of like swatches on different skin tones. And that wasn't really done back then. The full ingredient
Yeah.
list, people were getting more educated on ingredients back then. Now everybody's an expert. Back then, it was
Yeah.
just, the conversation was just starting. And so we just put the full ingredient list online. It's crazy to think, but like brands did not used to put the full ingredient list online. Um, so anyway, that was how uh, Into the Gloss really like I think lent itself nicely to Glossier. But going back to what you're asking about people ripping creative work off, there's been such egregious examples of it, and then there's been more like homages, and then there's been this which is always nice. And then there's been this like weird in between ground where it's like you can tell that they got the idea from you, but like it's not super obvious. So it's like, do you even complain? Is it worth complaining about? Which is why you have to have that friend that you can just
Yeah.
annoy with this kind of thing,
Yeah.
because otherwise you'll drive yourself nuts.
Yeah.
I am nervous about seeing if somebody rips off Kraum. I don't know how I'll react.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Well, because Kraum, and maybe this is a good segue, like, it feels like such an intentional brand. And, like, having seen it from the earliest pitch deck to now, like, having the actual product, which I used today, I used the micro taper for my concealer, and
That's what I use every day.
it's so good. And I used, I'm forgetting what it's called, but for my brows.
Oh, the square?
No, it's like angled.
The
Yeah.
angle.
Yeah. Great. Named it perfectly. So you leave Glossier. Do you immediately start founding soft services, or where did that come about?
No, I honestly hadn't taken a real vacation my entire time working at Glossier. I mean, I definitely traveled and like took time off, but it felt like I was always on my phone. So that was my first order of business, was to travel a ton. And I had already been to Japan to actually develop Glossier's mascara and their brow pen, which came out much later. So I'm not sure if they ended up going with the Japanese formula, but anyway. And I fell in love with Japan, and I bought a tiny makeup brush there because going back to when I first started wearing gel eyeliner, Bobbi Brown. It's not the same formula now, but that's okay. And applying it, I like couldn't get it as clean as I wanted. And my dad, being, even though he worked in advertising, he's like an artist at the end of the day. So I would go with him to the art supply stores, which I always loved. And I realized they had really tiny brushes there. So I used to buy all my eyeliner brushes at the art supply store. And so when I was in Japan and I saw this tiny little short-handled makeup brush, I was like, this is so crazy that no Western brands are doing this. I bought it on a whim, used it every day for my spot concealer. It became the taper brush.
Love.
And then I went to this fast forward, after co-founding soft services, getting the company into Sephora, launching like a ton of like successful products there. I left soft services and started basically like cold emailed the factory that made that original brush, because I was like doing Eyewitness Beauty, which is a beauty podcast. We're on hiatus. And I was thinking like, this would be fun just to make like 1,000 sets of these brushes and just sell it to Eyewitness Beauty readers, because it's like the one thing after all these years, since I was 16 years old, buying this makeup brush at the art supply store, to now, like, women are always asking me how I do my eyeliner. My friends are making me do their eyeliner before we go out all the time. Like, even as like a 36-year-old, which is crazy. Like, I have friends being like, are you going to be home half an hour before? Can I come by? And like before dinner. And I'm like, I'll just make these brushes. So I cold emailed the factory that made that original brush that I was obsessed with. Because then every time after that I've been back to Japan, I keep on collecting more and more of those brushes. And then I would find where this company was, like if they had a trade show in New York, and I would go bother them and be like, can I buy brushes here? Like I have like a whole, anyway, so I went to them, and they're making my brushes.
I mean, the entire packaging, from like the minute you get it, you open it, and there's the soap, and then there's the book that explains everything, how to do it. Like, it's probably the most intentional packaging and just branding that I've seen from, let alone like a beauty brand, but any brand in the past 6 to 8 months. So kudos to you there.
Thank you. But that's like 30 years, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Things move so quickly now. That's
no,
like
100%.
Yes.
Like, things move so quickly. And like, specifically when you think about, you mentioned as you were thinking about launching this brand, like, I'll use Eyewitness Beauty as kind of a launching pad for it. And I feel like what we've been talking a lot about is this idea of media as an incubator for brand and for product. Do you still think it's the best kind of launching pad to launch a brand today and to get your vision out into the world?
I don't know, because it comes with so many risks too.
Yeah.
Every day I wake up being like, oh my God, is there a new Reddit thread about me?
Yeah. Yeah.
And thinking, have I done anything to get canceled and put my business? Isn't that a funny, like, weird thing that we have to consider
It's
now?
really crazy to see.
The answer is no, by the way,
Yeah.
for any sane person, I would think, or it would be immediately obvious, right? But then you see these people day after, and you're like, oh my God, how did they not realize that they did this? And like, or what? And then I guess now I'm realizing, what do you do if you did do something bad in your past? Do you just never start a company? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, like Meadow Lane. Do you know Meadow Lane?
It sounds so familiar. Remind
It's
me what it is.
this, I think they're calling it a gourmet grocery store.
Yes, the one that people are lining up for.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
Tribeca, and that's been such an interesting, like, case study of building in public. And the founder has been very transparent about the fact that, like, people are calling, like, the public health department on him to get him shut down. And so I think when you're talking about, like, those, there are clear advantages to building in public. Like, you build early intrigue, you build a little bit of credibility early on, but there's also a lot of disadvantages that come with that. And what I find really interesting for you is, like, you have a really dedicated community of followers on Substack. What, if anything, like, what cushion do you feel like that provides for you to, you know, share your vision and share your why behind Kraum?
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't really know the answer to, because like I said, it's like this great cushion of support and people that really get it. Because I mean, for me at least, and it's gotten me in trouble with my mom, but not really with anybody else. I have always been very, I think I was telling you even before we sat down, like I have a really hard time lying. You can like read it on my face.
Yeah.
And so online, if I'm writing from first person, I'm just, you know, I try not to reveal too much about my personal life, of course, but I also am pretty forthcoming and direct about my feelings about whatever topic I'm writing about. And of course, you try to be respectful to people, but, you know, I'm not, and it's probably because I got my start at XO Jane where there was no filter and you couldn't get fired if you tried, which Kat Marnell tried constantly. And I guess she eventually succeeded, but like she might be the one person. So she deserves an award for that. But like, I just, anyway, so I guess it's kind of like, in a way, it's almost Trumpian where it's like impossible for him to get canceled. I wonder if for me, I have a little bit more leeway because I have been so forthcoming and honest about my opinions on things over the years, and been very like direct about what my standards are in terms of like quality or I don't know, what I like about product and things like that, or how a business should be run and like what my values are. And I think it's like people who figure that out now, it's like I've always been this way. So it's like if you have a problem with that now, it's not like I was ever hiding that from anyone. I wonder if maybe there are other more public figures that or if there are maybe other founders that become more of a public figure later on where they don't have that history of you know, speaking their mind online, if like it can be surprising then for people that are customers of their brand when they hear an opinion that maybe they weren't expecting. I think maybe that can be that poses some risk. But yeah, I mean, who knows? I don't know.
I mean, it's interesting because you launched your podcast in 2020, right? In 2021?
Yeah, it was right at the beginning of COVID.
Which was like pre-podcast boom. It still feels like 2020 was like early days for a podcast. If 2020,
really? It felt like we were late
so.
even back then.
I think 2020 was like, you were still kind of laughing when people were like, I'm going to start a podcast. And then by 2023, it was like, if you don't have a podcast, what are you doing?
I know. It's like having an Instagram account.
Yes, exactly. So when you guys started the podcast, where did that come from? Did you see it as like a vehicle to get your perspective out there, or was there something else going on underneath it?
Yeah, for years, speaking of earlier, when I made the jump to be Glossier full time and no longer on Into the Gloss, I mean, it was tough. I even had it asked to have it written in my job description that I had to write an article like once a month or something on Into the Gloss because I missed writing and I knew it would be important to my career. It's like, okay, if I'm not going to have a title that means something specific, at least like I should be able to like engage with my audience, you know, and grow my audience. But anyway, I think Nick and I, who's my co-host on Eyewitness Beauty, the podcast, were both, because he also came from the editorial world, went to the brand side, and then no longer had that platform really, because Instagram is like, it's not long form content. And Nick and I were writers and used to writing, you know, paragraphs on the internet and having people read it. And I think we thought podcasting was a good happy medium to where it's not something that, you I don't know where now there's Substack, but back then it's like, where would we put like long form opinion pieces online? And so, yeah, podcasting felt like a good way to like fill the void of having this direct line to an audience. And I think it worked how we wanted it to, but we always joke it's like the biggest vanity project. Yeah, we just wanted a place to not lose that connection, honestly. Like, and it's been fun, and I don't think either of us regret it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned Vanity Project, which is the name of your Substack now, but also I feel like part of your broader kind of brand ethos.
Yes.
What is your like fascination with vanities or the phrase Vanity Project overall?
Okay, so the vanity, the definition, or vanity, there's a few different definitions, right? But when I think of the vanity space, and the one that I'm really championing is the literal space where you get ready or you end your day at the vanity. And it used to be this dedicated space in the home where a woman would just be able to have time with herself. And I think that that's a huge part of the human experience. When you go back to like, I think grooming and quote unquote the beauty space is so like, it's so core to the human experience in both alone time and in community building. Like I think of like cavemen around the fire, like picking fleas off each other. But yeah, I think, and oftentimes people, and I think unfortunately it's vanity. Of course, it has this like negative connotation. And I think growing up and spending a lot of time in front of the mirror, it sounds like, super narcissistic and like self-involved. But I think it, not only was it me, like I basically had this incredible bathroom growing up. So I was really spoiled. We moved into a house where the people that built the house had twin girls. So I basically had an entire wing of the house to myself because they shared a bedroom. And then I had a bathroom with 2 vanities.
Okay.
It was gorgeous. And yeah, I had this the back vanity I kept for all my art supplies. And then the front vanity was like my vanity, and it was where I spent hours and hours and hours going from like learning how to like find like myself attractive basically, and like learning that I wasn't hideous because I was told for a long time. I went through an ugly stage, whatever. But
we've all been there. Like everybody has to glow up at some point.
Right. And it was like not a bad, and I think like it's such a shame that people act like vanity is a negative, because it was really freeing for me being able to actually discover like what I liked about myself. I didn't go and like change my face. Like I basically Googled people that looked like me.
Yeah.
Which I think is like the biggest beauty tip ever. You have to find the beautiful person who looks like you. You have to find your beauty icon that looks like you, that has your natural features or whatever features you have now.
Yeah.
No judgment if you do, get a nose job or whatever, and that's the nose that you have. Find somebody with those features now and use them as your blueprint.
Yeah. Who's your beauty icon or doppelganger?
Oh, now I'm gonna sound like an ass. Like now you're gonna expose me for being an asshole. I don't actually think I'm like as beautiful as these people.
Go for it.
I don't know. There's different ones for different things. Like Scarlett Johansson, I think has a really cute nose. Like she, round. Like I have a rounded tip, and I think she has that too. But she has, I think we have a similar nose. Women with like Frida Kahlo, of course, the eyebrows and the fact that she even like enhanced them further. I really experimented with that a lot in college. Again, I would just spend hours at the vanity, like basically dressing up in costume. And it really like made me learn a lot about myself. And I even went through this whole experiment a few years ago where I was spending a lot of time in Mexico City, and I dressed as Frida Kahlo. And that whole experience of like finding the clothes and layering the outfit. I even like made a corset because she, had an injury. I think she had polio, but she also had the injury, and she had to wear a back brace. She would paint it. And I like went through all these motions of how she got dressed every day. And then of course she decorated her hair with all the ribbons, like her whole, she was like a canvas of her own art in a lot of ways. So she's a really interesting person to think about for the idea of vanity, because she spent a lot of time at the vanity. Going through that process and dressing up as her, just underscored even further my belief that this is such an important, like, magical space in the home. And it's such a shame that here we are in 2020. What year is it?
5.
Five.
About to be 6.
About to be 6. And we're being marketed to all the time. Sorry. All these new beauty products that we have to buy.
Yeah.
All of these services even are coming into the home. Luxury beauty. Like, we have laser hair removal machines that you do at home. We have microcurrent devices that you do at home. We have LED masks that you do at home. We used to have to like go out to Dry Bar and get a blowout once a week, and now we're spending $600 on a Dyson hairdryer in the home. So we have, and then not to mention all the beauty of the products and, you know, things that we're collecting and using on ourselves at home. Yet the vanity space has gone extinct. And I'm trying, you know, as a beauty editor in New York City, moving apartments all the time, I need to have that dedicated space. It's like part of my job. But over the years, it's like I realize I'm always hacking together like vanities that I never have bought a vanity outright. And so in my latest apartment, looking for a vanity, I was finding, of course, all the ones that I would even consider like having in my bedroom and like living with were $10,000 on First Dibs. And there was, you know, no way in hell. Like I would literally have to sell my soul and marry like the evilest human alive to be able to live that lifestyle. And unless you start your own beauty company and make it about the vanity space. And so that was the path I chose.
I love it. Well, I love that you're specifically building for a space, because you talked about, you know, like your friends calling you up and saying, can I come over to do your brows? And I think that's something that people often don't realize is, like, to your point, it's such a personal thing. Beauty and makeup is such a personal thing, but it's also such a communal thing and such a, like, a thing of collective joy. When I think back with some of my favorite memories with friends, it's us crowded around a mirror, like doing our makeup together, sharing new lipsticks, like sharing new techniques. And it is a really just like beautiful ritual to have with the people that you love. And
it makes you love yourself more.
Yeah, 100%.
It's funny, like you know, I'm just not unique in this, but as someone growing up with a lot of like body issues, moving to New York and working, I interned in fashion when I first started coming to New York, and I interned at Alexander Wang. And part of my job was helping the fit models get dressed. I was in no way part of their cool campaign work, but I would work with models, you know, in that capacity. And I started dating this photographer that was friends with all these supermodels. They were so hot, and like being around them at night, and you would think that would like just drive me insane. But having this intimacy, like, in helping these women get dressed and like making friends with them, and then like going out drinking with these like literal supermodels at the bar and just seeing them up close and like hearing them talk about their insecurities. It's like, it made me like so much more appreciative of, you know, myself, and learning that these women also feel this way. And I think it's so important to connect with other women on that level. Because it can have this positive effect on yourself. You would think it would be the opposite, right? But it's...
No, totally. Like, I remember back in whatever it was, 2016, when Boy Brow came out. And I think it was your brows probably that I was looking at. And I grew up with very, like, I'm half Indian. So I have a lot of thick, coarse hair. And my eyebrows were very bushy growing up. I like started getting them threaded, but seeing people embrace like a bushier brow was such a big moment of me being like, oh my God, they're fine. Like, this isn't crazy. Like, this is actually high fashion, dare I say. And I think so much of what brands are trying to do today is to like identify and pinpoint what they want consumers to feel. And it sometimes feels like that's where the word authenticity is being kind of like plugged in for that feeling. When you think about somebody getting the Kraum brow sets and opening it up and starting to experiment with them for the first time, like, what do you want your buyer to feel? What do you hope these women or whoever else is feeling?
With the brushes, I hope they're like curious and like excited. I part of the reason I wanted to sell the set, or main reason I wanted to sell them as a set, is it reminds me a lot of those kind of discovery sets that you would get a lot as a kid, you know, whether it was like a science project or an art project that was all contained together with really specific instructions, and it taught you a new skill, or it helped you learn something. And I wanted going back to me doing my friend's makeup all the time, you know, unfortunately, and it breaks my heart every day. I don't know. I haven't lived in the same city as my best friend for a long time. I'm going to cry.
Oh.
And so I wanted this set to be like, if I wasn't there.
Yeah, I'm gonna cry.
It's so corny. I always like make fun of
No,
myself
I
for like
know.
saying, oh, this is why I care about the beauty industry. Oh my God, I am going to make fun of myself. This is exactly like if this ends up on social media, this is what my snobby friend, and I'm snobby with him, would DM each other and be like, can you believe this? This founder, like, this girl bossing and crying on a podcast about doing her friend.
No, sometimes you have to be the person you would make fun of, you know? Like,
I am the core of who, if I make fun of someone, it's because I see it in me.
yeah. I also saw a really good quote lately that was like, you have to be, like, to have taste, you have to be a little bit of a hater. Yeah. And so, like, if you want taste, unfortunately, you're going to have to hate. And so that's really justified some things for me personally.
It's an editor. I call it editing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, you know, I came up as an editor. It's what you do. You have to edit out things that, you know, curate.
Totally.
No, but I wanted this set to be, I don't know, just I wanted people to feel accomplished afterwards, after using them, I guess, because I think so many products are like, this thing will fix your thing, and you don't have to worry about that thing anymore. But I'm like, I think we're missing a whole part of the beauty process where it's fun to sit down and do your makeup. And like, even if it looks bad at the end, it's kind of funny. Like, or, you know, or you put on too much and everything is like patchy and then you have to like figure out how to fix it and then you learn something new. I just wanted to give, and I think women are intimidated by more specialized tools and things like that, yet they're fascinated by them at the same time. So I just wanted to be like, okay, here's 5 of the tiniest brushes you've ever seen. Yeah. Here's a booklet of like some things to get you started, and you can use them with the products you already have and like see what works and then start, you know, slowly adding new things. I just wanted it to kind of be, and my problem is as a marketer, which I learned at Glossier, I need to be more specific about telling people how to do stuff, which is hard when you want to be like the brand that's like not corny.
Right. But you do a really good job of that on your website. I think I sent you an email when you launched being like that. The videos that you have on your website of you using the brushes at the footer, I thought was so smart and inventive and giving people kind of like the direction of how to use it without it feeling overbearing or without it feeling too prescriptive. Like it really sets the tone for this being somewhat like explorative.
Cool. So good. I'm glad. I want to be like the Bob Ross of makeup.
Yeah. No, you succeeded.
Because so much of it is like how you load the brush and things like that. Yeah. So you have to be really specific. But I think too, having and I think that maybe this will be more of a macro trend. I'm just throwing it out there. Having products that help people get off their phone, I think will become an increasingly important. I think people are looking for that. And I think like the vanity space, and this is another reason why I love the vanity space. I mean, of course you could have your laptop open, you could be watching a YouTube video, sure, but I don't really use it like that. It is my time where I go in the zone. I leave my phone plugged in over here. I put my headphones in and I just, or like a friend is over and we're like talking because I'm like right up in her face, you know, and she can't be on her phone because I have to be doing her makeup. So yeah, I think being off the phone too is like a cool thing that I'm trying to balance that of like giving people direction where they don't have to be on their phone, but then of course getting those customers that like want to be on their phone. Right. It's tough.
And it becomes more, I think when you have the right tools in front of you, like it becomes a bit more intuitive. Also using them in the first place. Yeah. What are your favorite products to use with the brushes?
Chanel makes the best gel liner. Okay. They've kind of gone out of popularity, but that's the one, like on the cover of the booklet I'm wearing, the Chanel Calligraphy de Chanel, it comes in one color. It's the only one that comes in a pot. So if you want to do a graphic cat eye, really clean, I would highly recommend this product. I'm noticing that there might be a need for a gel liner in the future for Kraum because people are freaking out about this product.
Oh, interesting.
And then from there, it's like a lot of people think the brushes are just relegated to the eye area, but like you said, the taper brush I use every day with concealer. So like a cream concealer. I love Dermacolor because I like to use a lot of different colors and you can make your own palette. Or Dermablend. Sorry, Dermacolor is a different one. anyway, they're like
One
kind
of
of old
them.
school, like Hollywood makeup brands,
Oh, okay.
like makeup artist brand
Yeah.
type things. Like you can get
Are they
Alcone.
like potted or like on a palette almost?
You can buy them. Yes, it's like almost when you would buy the MAC individual eyeshadows and fill up
Okay.
a palette with them. You can buy
Got
them
it.
like that, and you can buy them in pre-made palettes too.
Got it.
Derma Blend, Kryolan Derma Blend is, I believe, the name. Anyway, and I love those cream eye sticks now that brands are making, and I'm pretty sure they all come from the same factory. And the tip is to get them all from a brand called Kiko Milano.
Okay.
That's a brand too. It's like they're less expensive than MAC, but I would put them on par with MAC, and they're made in Italy. And I believe their factory produces for a lot of like
Yeah.
big brands.
What do you make of MAC finally going to Sephora? Is that true, or am I making this up?
You're not making it up. I think I read that. I mean, it makes me a little worried for the state of the industry because I feel like there's a lot to Sephora is just a behemoth, and there's a lot to love about Sephora. I have 2 companies now that are in Sephora, with Glossier and Soft Services, and I know that they can like completely transform a business overnight. However, in the beauty space, it's like right now there's either Sephora or Ulta, and like in this phase right now where I'm been raising money for Kraum, it's one of the biggest questions, like, okay, so who's your retail partner? And it's basically like you Sephora or Ulta, Sephora
Right.
or Ulta. I mean, there are smaller like global retailers, Space NK, Blue Mercury, but yeah, it's a big question mark. There's a monopoly happening in the industry where like every brand is going to be in Sephora or Ulta,
Right.
and that means that they also kind of like really call the shots for small brands. And to support a retailer like Sephora, you need to invest a lot too. You know, you need to have sales teams, you need to have education for the employees, you need to like be able to buy inventory and ship it
Right.
out, and just even the logistics side. And you have to provide them with marketing assets. You have to, they'll give you great opportunities to be a part of a big marketing deal, and either you need to pay for it or pay for it and produce content for it or whatever. So, all of which is to say, for small beauty businesses, it's a kind of a weird time right now because it seems like there should be at least a third option for growth. But yeah, it's interesting. I think MAC, it's such a shame to see a MAC store close. I will say that.
Yeah.
There's only 1 or 2 in the city now.
Before we wrap up, I have one like last real question for you, and then a few rapid fires, if that's okay. I'm a big fan of Feed Me, which I know is where you launched or did your exclusive for Kraum. And you said something really fascinating to me in that, which is you said if you're competitive and you're creative, you're good at business. It pisses me off when business people look down on creatives and when creatives act too pure for business. So we talked about how you started as, a creative, XO Jane, then into the gloss, and obviously you launched 2 brands now. Why do you think creative people make the best founders?
Ooh. Well, I think creative people do the best at everything, right? I don't know. It's hard. I've been trying to put myself in other people's shoes a lot more frequently, I'm realizing. And I do, and certain people, I'm like, why don't I see eye to eye with this person? And sometimes it is because they're just not a creative thinker in the way that I am. And it might have nothing to do with business. I might know this person from a completely different part of my life. And that's fine. I envy people that don't have to do exactly what I'm talking about, which is think about things in a 360 way and then like analyze every outcome and like imagine. And, not that these people never do that, but it's just like they're maybe more in the moment. They like value different things out of life, whatever. But in terms of building something new, you have to have vision. So you have to have imagination, then you have to have a way to get there and be clever enough to figure that out despite many obstacles that you'll inevitably encounter. So I think just naturally that is a creative person. And that kind of goes back to what we were speaking about earlier with the friction between like a creative person coming into a like quote unquote corporate environment. I think for some reason startup culture decided to really like pair those people off into two different like entities, like
Yeah.
as if they couldn't coexist. And maybe it's because creatives oftentimes like worked in agency capacities, like my dad at an advertising agency, and now that's all in house, so they feel like they need to like differentiate and treat these people differently.
Right.
But it is something that I've noticed, and I'm not just speaking from my experience. I'm just speaking with friends in the industry and other founders and other people that have come from startup world. It's weird in the startup space like no other. There is so much friction between the creative team and the business people.
Right.
And I think the creatives, you actually don't run into the problem a lot of times with the creatives being like, no, we're too pure to be on the business side. If they're working at a company, trust me, they don't have that attitude.
Yeah.
But anyway, then there's the business people that I think are fine othering the creatives because the less cooks in the kitchen, the better, I think that they're kind of, or maybe, I don't know. I have heard a lot of people complain, and I think once you like level with someone who's like a business person and start talking ideas, you realize, oh no, you're a creative too. Like we see eye to eye on a lot of things. Very rarely have I come across a person that's like completely devalued the creative side of things, but I have heard and I have seen organizationally, and I have heard from other people in the industry that, they run into that a lot with, people that come, they oftentimes bucket them as like the business school types that don't value the creative. But do you think it's just a startup world issue, or?
Well, I think it's definitely like I've seen it more with the startups that we've worked with than anybody else. But I do think going back to the storytelling of it all that we were talking about earlier, like I almost wonder if that's the solve here. If like the storytelling roles are going to be the first time we see the business and the creative tried to be like paired together in a more like balanced way than marketing is often treated. Because I think that's what you're talking about is like so often creatives are seen as like the ideas people, and then the business people are seen as like the people with the practical know-how to actually execute. And I'm wondering if the storytelling people are going to have to do both, and that's what's going to make them more valuable than people on either ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, I think that it sounds like, you're right. The storytelling person is supposed to be the glue or the bridge, that kind of, and that was essentially my role at Glossier. It was like this like in between kind of, somebody that really understood and like worked with the analytics. Because even
so what we're saying is like you created the storytelling function.
Essentially, I am like patient zero of storyteller as a role.
What do you think the biggest fad in 2025 will end up being?
Like this year or next year?
This like of this year.
Fad?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, an easy one that's just top of mind is the bro-ification of like junk.
Yeah.
And I think these people must be like, you can tell these people had so much fun with it. And I've actually seen the product in person, and I'm like, okay, this is fun and I get it, but I don't like it at the end of the day. I'm not into it. But somebody posed the idea that it might be because we're in, like, it might be like recession-y kind of stuff. Like people are collecting Beanie Babies and they just want
like
these
silly
cheap
bands-esque
thrills. But I don't know. I've heard this argument forever of like why people like merch. I don't know. But yeah, the Labubus are kind of funny. And like even from a business perspective, it's like, because there's no practical reason to have a Labubu. And I always say like the perfect product, it mixes practical and emotional. But it's like, then how do you explain Labubu?
Right. I mean, practical, like it's an accessory. I don't know much more than that. But I mean, they're getting like, they were what, like $600 at their peak for like
I had no
good
idea.
ones. Like on the resale market, they were insane. Conversely, like what do you think is sticking around?
Ooh, into next year? Gosh. Oh, that's such a good, well, unfortunately, I think AI.
Yeah.
And I say unfortunately because I think that there's like I think there's a lot of ethical issues that like we don't talk about in terms of AI and advertising. Like we made such a big stink about Photoshop, and now we're just making fake photography, and it's not even for like an artistic expression. It's just because you don't want to hire people and like I don't know. It's hard for me to understand as somebody that coming from, a long line of advertisers and kind of understanding how the industry has evolved, that like now we're just putting out things that never existed at all.
I also think a lot about how even the biggest AI leaders aren't using AI for their own ads. And like
Oh.
that's interesting to me. Like if you look at the campaign that ChatGPT did, like they went and hired the cinematographer, director from Euphoria. They didn't like ask for somebody, they didn't ask for an AI bot to storyboard it. So I feel like there's still this level of awareness that human creativity is going to far surpass what AI can do, because at the end of the day, it's like it's generative. It's just building what already exists. And I feel like such a big part of brand building is building like entirely new worlds and new feelings and new emotions that people don't know that they're capable of yet.
Hmm.
So I'm hopeful that, I think copywriting unfortunately is like already affected. You can see it in so many ads and you can see it in so many like op-eds, even to the extent that AI is being used, but I'm hopeful that in campaigns and creative it'll, I mean, Coca-Cola though did an AI generated ad, so what do I know? But we'll see.
No, I feel like you should be prevented from doing that if you have enough money to pay real people.
Right? Yeah, especially an institution that large.
I'm hearing all sorts of weird things about AI. I don't know. That's just creating more and more waste and junk. And I do
Yeah.
think like digital waste is a huge issue. And I have a phrase, no physical or digital waste. And that's like
Mm.
how I try to run all my businesses. And that means like not spamming people either, not
Yeah.
like coming up with AI ads to
Mhm.
test and learn and like see, I don't
Yeah.
know. It just feels, I'm not into it. I can't always vocalize why, because I could go on for days, but
Yeah, no.
yeah.
I feel yeah. Um, Last question. What is your favorite current branding right now other than Kraum?
Branding. Oh my gosh. Um, I love legacy brands.
Mhm.
And so like for Krom's pop up this weekend, like I'm a very easy sell. And it's so funny because like I think it's everybody's like, oh, Wes Anderson. I love Wes Anderson
Yeah.
movies, or like Sofia Coppola movies. The visual language of those are so like brilliant. And there's a shop in Milan, and then, of course I find out later they're like owned by the Prada family, but it's called Marchesi 1824,
Oh, I haven't
and
heard of
it's
it.
like a patisserie candy shop, and I think they have like 3 or 4 locations in Milan and then 1 location in London, and it's just so old school. Like the boxes
Mm.
are like, if you think crumb boxes are nice, like these are candies and they come in like the most gorgeous boxes, and they take, when you check out, like it took forever to check out at the end of the day because they were tying each one with a bow, and just putting in the most beautiful packaging. And it's just old school, and it feels like it's been around from 1824 because it has. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I like brands with like a lot of like simple legacy branding. And anyway, but I'm overnighting these chocolates to get here for the pop-up.
Oh, I saw. Okay,
'Cause
that's what you wanted.
I don't know. I just think they're so magical. And like, I hope it's not, I hope that people coming to the pop-up will think it's special too. I don't know. Like, I'm just like,
I feel like anytime a brand's product gets overnighted, that is such a like gift and such just a like compliment to their product and work. So
yeah, because they don't even ship international. So like,
wait,
even
how'd
my
you get it?
customers, I'm like, so many people, even cool people that go to Milan way more than I like
Yeah.
haven't been to this place. So I'm like excited
Oh,
to
that's gonna be so
introduce
fun.
people. Yeah. Can't
Well,
wait.
thank you so much for coming today. I feel like this was
This was
clearly just
fun.
an excuse for me to like fawn over you for an hour, but
I'll
I'm so
take it.
grateful for your time.
Let's do it every week.
Oh my God, I'd love to.
Thank
Okay,
you for having me. This was
of
really fun. I love
course.
talking about this stuff. So,
Anytime.
except you made me cry.
I mean, common response.